You guys are like fire-breathing dragons.
Work on your pH and your saliva.
We'll have to get a saliva expert on here.
You're not going to get good if you're only practicing a month out of the year.
I want to stress to everybody that if you haven't heard Jed gobble with a mouth call, you should, because it's very impressive.
Sorry guys, that was just me on my mouth call.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Clucking Around podcast. Today, I have Brian, myself, Mike, and we have a special guest today, Jed Paronish, with us today to talk about some turkey tips, tactics, and just everything turkey, and some things that he does to get ready to be in the turkey woods. So, how's it going, Jed?
Good, guys. How you guys doing?
Good. All right, so I'm just going to kind of get right to the point here. What is something that you do to get yourself ready for turkey season and calling? You know, roughly when do you start? Like, when do you start pulling those calls out and getting them ready? And like, you know, what do you do to get started?
I'd have to say it changes year to year. Just depends on my mood. Obviously, leading up to what I consider the hardcore calling season, just leading up to that is bow season, and if I'm lucky enough to be successful early, that would make my hardcore turkey calling prep start a little bit sooner. But obviously this year I have not been successful yet, so it's kind of pushed back a little bit. But to be honest, I'd have to say that I try to stay in tune throughout the year, and it just depends on really my mood. I call a lot at work depending on what my particular job is that day. But now that we're closing in on December, it really starts, I call a lot at home, in my kitchen. I mean, just get the calls out, really start focusing on things that, throughout the year, it's keeping in tune. But now it's okay. Hey, we're about a month away from contest, so let me start practicing scenarios. Or if I feel that I need work on my key run, let's just focus on that. Focus on the things that, not that you're comfortable and you feel good about. Hey, my yelping's great, and everybody wants to hear what they're good at. You got to work on what you need work on.
Right, and I do want to point out that Jed is a competition turkey caller, so he will be calling at Grand Nationals this February, and so he might be a little bit more hardcore than your average turkey hunter when it comes to getting the turkey calls out and starting to warm them up. But like as a turkey hunter, I think we start to see the shift coming as soon as deer season ends, right? Like, soon as rifle season ends, then people start thinking turkey. So, what are some of your accomplishments, throughout your years of turkey calling at Grand Nationals, and how long have you been turkey calling for?
Well, why don't you back up and start with what got you into competition calling?
Well, I would have to say, for starters, what really got me into this, I have to mention that turkey hunting was not a very big family pastime. Like, it wasn't like deer season, like where everybody in your family did it. It was something that I kind of just felt like I was drawn to. Was introduced to it by a few family friends, and then it kind of built. I didn't start off turkey hunting when I was 12. I would say hardcore started when I was about 18. And once I did discover it, I was kind of like, man, I kind of felt like left out, because it's like I could have been doing this since I was 12. But I was thankful that the spark was there. And then, to be honest with you, I remember my 18th birthday, I got a book from Lohman Calls, and it was basically a how-to. And I remember Brad Harris was part of that book, and I started watching videos and started to just immerse myself in anything that I could. And I want to say probably wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I've, not through my own discovery, but I had people say, like, have you ever called in a contest? And I was like, no. And they're like, maybe you should give it a shot. And I will say that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. As much as I love to call, obviously the contest scene is depending on what kind of person you are. Now, I love to call, but I really struggled. I entered my first contest and felt confident in my calls, but I got on stage and I felt like a complete moron. Like the stage fright and the it's just different, But I did that. I got into the contest scene. I did it for, I thought, okay, first one's going to be tough. Got to give it more of a go, try a few more. And it never really got easier. It got to the point where I just said, you know what, I love to call, but I don't need to call in a contest. It was just it wasn't fun. The nerves part of it. So I quit. I just got out of it. So it wasn't until a few years later I hunted with a guy that he's been around the block. He's been around a lot of good callers. And after our hunt, which it was a successful hunt that day, he sat down and talked to me, and he said, hey, he's like, I know you gave contest calling a try. He's like, I really think you should try it again. He said, comparing you to what I've heard in the past, guys that had success, he said, I think you should give it another go. Yeah. And I have, and I will say that probably 15 plus years later, being on stage still hasn't got much easier, just little ways to try to just get myself through. So yeah.
Cool. And you've finished now in the finals. How many years? And
let me think. I've been in the finals. Probably 5-6 times now.
Yeah,
I think
you've been pretty consistent the past.
I've been
3 years now.
Yeah, the last 3 years have been, I'm not trying to sound cocky, but I almost expect to be there.
And that's the mentality you have to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and something that you're known for and everybody always likes to see on social media is your gobbling.
Yep.
You're a really good gobbler.
And you did win the gobbling championship before, right?
Yeah, I have 2016. I won the Grand National Gobbling Championship, and then
I think that was the first year we met, right?
yeah, 2016 I met you, and
That's
then
probably what made you that much better, but
I think so. And then
We'll go
it's
with it.
funny though, because in Arkansas they've changed it so many times. I don't know. I honestly don't remember if it's a world champion or a U.S. Open championship, but I want to say it was probably like 2018 or 19. I won that. It's funny though, because that gobble was like, it's a contest that I never really. I care about it, but it's more just for fun. But but it's funny though, because certain things that you don't take as serious gives you maybe a level of comfort, like, I don't really care about it. And I think it makes me not get as worked up. It's just like, I'm going to go do my thing, and if I do well, good. If not, okay, I'll just get them next year.
Right.
Well, going off of the gobbling, that's a question we get asked all the time. What call are you using to gobble on? How are you doing it? If we could kind of talk about like the technique you're using and
I think one common misconception. When people think of a gobble, they think of harsh, they think hard blow. You got to blow a ton of air. It's got to be a super thick, tight call. And for me personally, that's not the case. It's the more relaxed you are inside your mouth, it doesn't have to be crazy tongue pressure. I personally use a fairly loose call.
What stretch do you think you're using out of our calls?
For the gobble, it's always been the low stretch.
Low stretch.
I've tried to tinker over the years. You try to take different people's opinions over a course of time. Certain people say, "Oh man, if you could get your gobble to do this," or "Man, if you could get a little bit harsher of an ending." Everybody has their perception of what a perfect gobble is or what they've heard. And I guess the easiest way to try to come up with your, the gobble that you're going to put out is, okay, in a contest scene, you're calling to 7 judges. So what middle ground can I find that's going to cover what 7 different guys want to hear? Just try to put something together that's not too deep, not too high pitched. But it's always been a looser call, thinner latex, either a V cut or a bat wing, and it's just, I know it's, if you're able to do something and it comes natural to you, it feels easy. And I know guys struggle with it. There's no big secret. It's just, I always just kind of, I never like to say like word out the mouth or like mouth out the words, this or that, but I'm going to do that here. Is just like I kind of start off with a ticka ticka toka toka toka, and then I just kind of carry it. It builds and then it drops off, and it's just.
So if you're explaining it to a guy that's never tried to mouth gobble before, that's the words you're mouthing.
That's what I do. I mean, that's the simplest way to describe it.
Yeah.
And it's emphasizing not putting a ton of pressure, tongue pressure up on the call. It can't be, you can't jam that call up in the roof of your mouth. Your tongue has to, hold the call in place.
It's almost laying on your tongue.
And then and then it's the cadence. It's, you can't go too slow, you can't go too fast. You have to build it and then drop it off a little bit, and just listen. Listen to a wild turkey gobble, and just I don't know. Maybe I'm I spend hours just listening to a turkey gobble. I'll play the same turkey gobbling over and over, and I'll just try to match the pitch and all that.
Right. Something I don't want to stray too far off topic, but something I heard you say earlier was about when you gobble, you got to try and find the middle ground, like what the judges want to hear.
Right.
And that's always very, fascinating to me, is that, every judge or everybody interprets a turkey call a different way. Yep. And has a sound in their head of what they want to hear. So I think, you being a competition caller, that's something that is very hard, because you have the sound in your head that you want to hear.
Right.
Is that the sound that they want to hear, though?
Yep.
So you have that playing in your head, like what is the sound that they want to hear?
Yeah, it's frustrating because I've had times where I record myself a lot, and I'll either hear a turkey in the wild that I record with my phone, or I'll find something on social media or YouTube. I'll find a turkey that I might be able to mimic almost to a T, and I'm like, man, this will score good. And you go to a contest, and if it might be something, it might not be your prototypical turkey that people think that they're going to hear. You could do that in a contest, and you could just get hammered. Judges could score you very low. You might find a judge that'll give you a 20 because he heard a turkey that was similar to that, but then you'll have a judge that'll be like, what was that? Like, I've never heard that. And it could be to the point where, they give you a low score. And then in a week or two, they could watch that same social media clip or video on YouTube and say, oh my God,
that sounded
there's
awesome.
That turkey,
Yeah.
It just, it's not cut and dry. And, it's just, it's something that if you're going to be a competition caller, you have to accept that it is what it is. And you might put out what you think is the best yelping that you've ever done. And you might get hammered for it. You might get scored really high. You just never know.
It's the name of the game.
Yep. So that's why I say you got to find a middle ground. You got to find something that's not too off the wall, but obviously you want to sound as real as possible too. So
something, we're keeping us more geared towards, the build up of the season and the practice of it,
Yep.
calling and stuff like that. But what application are you using the gobble in while you're hunting? If somebody's out there, like, why would, somebody might say, why do you want to learn how to gobble on a
Right.
mouth call? Because we do use it in the woods also.
yes, I mean, obviously, first and foremost, you're going to hear, the safety aspect of it. You walk around the woods gobbling. I would have to say that increases the chance for negative. You may draw in other hunters, and on the far end of the spectrum, the worst part is you don't want to be gobbling and ever get shot.
Right.
So you have to be very cognizant of that, and I am. I use it sparingly, but it is and can be a very valuable tool. I will say that the most probably the most positive impact that I've ever had using it was one time in particular. I was confident that I was in a patch of woods where I didn't have to worry that there was other hunters, and it was just a gobbler that had a lot of hens with them. And I thought I was in the game, tree calling to them, getting responses, but while that was happening, I could hear a lot of other hens, and they ended up flying down. And what I didn't want to happen was when they flew down, I could tell everything was moving away from me. Gobbles were getting more distant, and I thought, what do I have to lose? I'm gonna gobble. And I threw out a couple gobbles, and it was like they turned on a dime. Those hens, and I don't know if that sparked the hens' interest or if it sparked the gobbler, but whatever it did, it definitely changed the direction that they wanted to go. And I ended up, it was a successful hunt. It was a little while back, but I do remember there being at least 10 hens, and I thought,
Yeah.
had I not done that, had I not gobbled, those turkeys would have continued the direction they were going, and
Yep.
that was that. So
Definitely serves its purpose.
does it work every time? No, nothing. Nothing in the turkey woods works every time. But it's just something that if you want to enhance your your bag of tricks, that's something that definitely it's worth a try.
Right. Yeah, and I want to stress to everybody that if you haven't heard Jed gobble with a mouth call, you should, because it's very impressive. And we
I
have
think before the end of this episode, we'll maybe get them a sound file.
we have put them on the spot. We have a lot of videos on our Facebook and stuff that you can go watch Jed gobble. And if you were in the woods and you heard him gobbling, you would probably think it's a wild turkey because you're very impressive. All right, so let's take this back to when let's say you're getting your calls out to go hunting, okay, and you're starting to warm up some calls. We get a lot of messages from guys saying that they're warming their calls up, after deer season hits. And where are you storing your calls? How are you, when you get them out, how are you making sure you separate your reeds properly, everything like that, to keep a good quality?
Well, there's a few things you can do. I know guys like to separate their reeds, put toothpicks between the reeds. I've never done that. Maybe I'm a glutton for punishment, but I at least like to make sure that I rinse my calls off with water, dry them off, let them air dry just on a paper towel. Once they're somewhat dry, throw them in a case that, the big thing is guys get a case that doesn't have any way for the calls to breathe. They just throw them in the case wet and make sure that the case can ventilate the calls, and then I put them in the fridge. If I can't do that, let's say you're in turkey camp or whatever, just make sure the calls are dry. And for whatever reason, why I don't put toothpicks between the reeds, I don't. It's extra time it's not a big deal for me to put the call in my mouth, get the reeds wet and then just kind of pick them apart. But if you take care of a call, there's no reason. I mean, I have calls that are 5 years old that, you're always going to have your calls that are standout calls that, when they do finally die, it's kind of a sad day.
Right.
But you're going to have your calls. I don't, with the materials of today, if you take care of a call, they'll last.
Right.
Obviously as a call company, we're happy to sell calls, but there's nothing saying that if you don't take care of them that they won't last.
Right. Yeah, you always hear like that one guy who, pulls his call out once a year and then puts it away and, rinses it off, takes good care of it, puts it away and uses it for 15 years because he doesn't want to blow the stretch right out of that call. Right.
So. Yeah, and I would definitely say, what you said about rinsing them off. I know I tend to, if I do, when I'm done using a call, if I rinse out, actually pull the reeds apart, let water get down in there, then let it air dry like you're saying. When you pull it out the next time, you don't have that real. They pretty much just pull right apart. You don't have like that stickiness, when you're really trying to put your tongue in between the reeds or get some water in there. So that's a big thing. I definitely want to stress that you want to rinse them off every time when you're done. And it's sometimes you just don't have the chance to do that, which they're still going to work the next time. You can still get them separated, but you definitely want to rinse them off if you have the opportunity.
Right. Well, one thing we've really noticed is that, and I mean, I truthfully believe this, but I think everybody's saliva is a little bit different because, I can use a call for months, set it on a windowsill, pull it back up, 6 months later, and the latex is still perfectly fine. But I know, Brian, you've had some trouble with.
Yeah, if I don't rinse calls off within 2 to 3 weeks, my calls dry rot. Whether it's something like the acid in my saliva or whatever, but it's really weird. And we actually had 2 other people reach out that we know of, throughout the years that said the same thing. And it just comes down to call care again. As long as I'm rinsing it off every time I'm done, I don't have a problem with that call. But if I use a call and let it sit there for 2 weeks, it'll not even being in the sun. It just looks like it has like the consistency of the latex is dry rotting.
You guys are like fire-breathing dragons.
I guess.
We'll have to get a saliva expert on here.
Yeah.
Better work on your pH and your saliva.
Something. It's weird.
A little bit of lime
It is weird. It gets these little tiny. It looks like it cracks.
Yeah.
Like, it has these little tiny cracks all over it, and we've compared our calls, and mine don't do that, and yours do. So, like,
Yeah.
what else could
Yeah.
it be? you
Same
know?
exact latex.
Well, I mean, if you think about turkey calling, and everybody wants an easy explanation of how do you do this or how do you do that, it all boils down to everybody is different. My mouth is shaped different than yours, and that goes as far as what you're just saying there about saliva. It's just there's so many differences in people. There's no easy cut dry answers, and that's why you just have to experiment, tinker, and just find what's best for you. But common thing there though is if you want to call last, you have to take care of it. Simple as that.
Yeah, it seems like with turkey calling, like when you start the journey, you go down this road where, and I want to talk about this later, but everybody starts out almost in the same place, where you're blowing your air from and things like that. And then that you gradually just start advancing, and it takes time. Like it takes years. And even after years, you still are learning and
Yep.
trying to, perfect things. But it's not something that you're just going to pick up a call on the first day, put in your mouth, and, be the greatest turkey caller in the world. Like, it takes years to get to be, now, obviously, everybody can pick up a call. Not everybody, but a lot of people can pick up a call, go out, and kill a turkey. But we're talking about if, getting to a point where you want to be very proficient and sound as most like a real turkey as you can. It takes years.
Yeah.
And Brian, you and I have been on similar paths. Like, you just did it before me, and then it seems like everything that I've done up until this point, I'm just a couple steps behind you.
Yep. And now we have
couple
Mike.
hundred.
Now we have Mike.
Takes years, like 25 or so.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. You're not gonna get good if you're only practicing a month out of the year.
Yeah.
It's 365 days. I mean, I had a job where I was able to put a turkey call in my mouth all day, and I just finally. And I'm not a competition caller by any means, but
Yeah, but from where when I first heard you call to where you're at now is leaps and bounds. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it just shows that if you put the time in,
yeah,
you're going to have, you're never going to go backwards. You can only get better unless you're doing something totally.
Right.
I met a guy one time, and I know him well. For years, I never knew this. We've hunted together. He was always putting the call in his mouth backwards. He had the horseshoe facing his throat, and he was sucking in on the call.
Really?
And finally, one day, he
I at
saw
least
me
feel
put,
better about myself. I'm putting it in the right way.
Well, he finally saw, one day he saw me pull the call out of my mouth, and he's like, wait a minute. He's like, is the reeds facing out? And I was like, yeah. And he said, oh my gosh, I've been doing it backwards since day one.
That dude's lucky to still be alive.
I know. I don't even know how he did it, to be honest with you.
Wow.
it's like the grunt tubes where you suck in instead of blow.
Yeah, right.
I mean, yeah. At least you can make them a little bit better, but
Yeah.
wow, that's
Yeah. So I want to touch base on some mouth call mechanics, things that you do or you could tell the viewers, just to get them on the right path to where they would want to be with turkey calling, and we can, go, like, I know we use the terminology blowing air versus
Right.
diaphragm calling. Like, that's,
Right.
We get a lot of questions on that. So let's touch base on some of those
Yeah,
things.
that's obviously tough to verbally try to
Right.
lay that information out there. But yeah, if you can think about the air coming from your diaphragm deep within, as opposed to just, you hear the term and you'll hear it on any how-to video that you come across on YouTube, or anything like that, is, fogging up a window. If you huff or try to fog up a window, that same motion, or the air is coming from your diaphragm. That's ultimately where you want to get to. That's where you're going to get your full spectrum of sound. Yeah, can you just blow air and get a turkey call to make noise? Yeah, absolutely. And can you kill turkeys doing that? Yes, you can. But if you want to get the sounds that a turkey is able to produce, that's where you're going to get them. I'm not saying that that's easy, but that's the start. You'll hear guys say, not only listen to wild turkeys call, but it helps to watch them too. If you watch a wild turkey call, every time if they're yelping, you'll see their tail, the tail feathers kind of going in and out. Like you can see them moving, and you can tell they're calling from that deep within. Right. And like I said, it's not an easy thing to verbally just explain. But I mean, if I could give any bit of information, if you can visualize that, that's what you want to get to.
Right. So by blowing air, you're basically to explain it is you're basically cutting off the air from your throat. You're kind of closing your throat.
Yeah.
And if you were to like fill your cheeks almost with air, and you're blowing all the air directly from your mouth.
Yeah.
Not allowing any air to come up from your diaphragm or from your lungs. You're just closing your throat, and all the air is just coming straight from like your cheeks and your mouth. When you're diaphragm calling, like you said, you're fogging up a window.
Yeah.
You can't, like you go up to that window and you're huffing.
Yep.
And you're blowing that air. That is the mechanic that you want when you're blowing the air across the turkey call. You want the air to come directly from the lungs, from the diaphragm, and straight across the turkey call. And by doing that, it really, like you said, allows you to have way more of a variety of sounds.
Right.
And way more of a realistic sound, because that's what the turkey is doing.
Yep.
When the turkey calls, you can see its entire body moving, and that's because all that air is coming from the diaphragm and out of, out through its mouth. Another thing that I wanted to talk about was, we were just talking about this a little bit ago, but you were saying about, or we were all saying about how it takes time, to learn to turkey call, and it can take years. One thing that I have been fortunate is that, Brian came up with the 3-stretch option, so we sell each turkey call in a low, medium, and high stretch. And this really allows you to fine-tune your calling style. And,
Sorry, guys, that was just me on my mouth call.
So it really allows you to fine-tune your calling style as if you're a beginner turkey caller. Some people really like a low stretch call, and by the stretch, we mean the amount of tension that is applied to the reeds when building a turkey call. So depending on the shape of your mouth, if you have a deeper palate, if you have a narrow palate or a flatter palate, I guess I would say, I believe that these are all things that are, that changes whether you would want a low stretch call or a tight stretch call, And I know for me, like, I have a more narrow palate and it's deeper, so I tend to like a stretch that's a little tighter. I use more tongue pressure, and that allows me to achieve the sounds that I want to hear, where, like, I know, Brian, you have more of the flatter style palate, and you can use a call that's looser stretched and use less tongue pressure.
I hardly use any tongue pressure at all. Whenever I'm calling, what do you typically use a low stretch call? And do you use, like, when you're talking about tongue pressure, how much tongue pressure do you think you're putting on a call?
I'm not putting a lot. I favor a low stretch call, but I have been experimenting with more medium stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting different tones, I guess. I mean, you have to be mindful, like when I'm running a low stretch call, I guess the tongue, I kind of use my tongue as a valve maybe, or like a tuning fork. And what I found is to get some of the variance of sound, I'm either increasing or decreasing tongue pressure.
Yep.
Now, if I do that same thing as I go with a tighter call, obviously the reeds are stretched tighter. So if you do the same amount of tongue pressure, you're taking a little bit tighter stretch call and you're putting more tension on it because you're pushing up with your tongue. And I find that I have to be very mindful of that because going from a loose stretch to a medium stretch, sometimes when I put the tongue pressure up, it gets a little bit too high. You know? So that's how it is for me. I don't really know what kind of pellet I have. I just know that if push comes to shove and you say, hey, you have one turkey call to take out hunting, I'm going to pick the low stretch for me personally because I feel that I can manipulate that call and it works best for me to cover whatever I want to cover. Gobbles to, pretty much any call that the wild turkey can do. That's just me though.
Right. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing is you're able to have that option. If you want to use a low stretch call, you can. Right. Versus getting a call pulling it out of a package and not having any idea what stretch it is, and that's what's helped a lot of us over the years is being able to really fine tune that.
Yeah, and just something else to add to that, we do offer the starter packs where you have the low, medium, and high stretch call. It's the same exact cut, built the same way, but just stretched differently. And we just because one of those works for you, doesn't. The way I want to put it is all three will work. You can make great turkey sounds with all three of them, but there's going to be one of those calls that you're just more comfortable with because of, again, the way your mouth is and how much tongue pressure you apply. And you'll just find one that's going to, again, just best suit you.
Yeah. A lot of guys talk about using all three for different scenarios. So, if it's, let's say it's like a windy day, they might pick out one of those calls that allows them to get louder on, because there's probably one of them, that they can get really loud on, and then there's one of them that they can be really soft on. So they use all three of them for different scenarios, which I think is really awesome. What would you say? There's so many people out there that want to criticize competition callers and say, they might be able to sound, like the best turkey out there, but can they hunt? Can they kill a turkey? And what do you think is the correlation between competition calling versus hunting? Do you think there's any correlation there between the two?
Yeah, I mean, the guys that I know that I compete against, there's not a one of them that struggle to kill turkeys. Right. Simple as that. I can't speak for the past, maybe, I don't know if maybe there were guys that just called to call in competitions, but they were terrible turkey hunters. I doubt that.
I was going to ask that. Do you know anyone personally that calls competitively that doesn't turkey hunt?
No. Everyone that I know is a hardcore turkey hunter.
I kind of feel like that's kind of the theme. Like
you almost wouldn't get into it. It'd be odd to me. Like what, you kind of I think you become anybody that has become a competition turkey caller. They're not going to just be like, oh, I want to be a competition turkey caller. Like
without
you
having
start
some
off
kind
with
of
the
background.
obsession. You're hunting, and what can make me a better turkey hunter? You can work on your woodsmanship, which that's very important. But being a better turkey caller is never going to hinder you, ever. Right. So it's never going to go away. You're always going to have your naysayer guys that say, oh, I don't, I'm no competition turkey caller, and I kill my limit every year. It's never going to go away. It's always going to be a thing. But, deep down, who wouldn't want to sound as much like a turkey as possible? I always say it's the guys that just maybe don't want to put the time in to sound better, and that's fine, But me personally, I always said that I want to be able to fool turkeys. I want to be able to fool people. If I can fool the best ear, you might have a guy like Denny Galvis that's filming turkeys down over the hill. I want to be able to fool him if I can. Right. But yeah, I mean, it's is it necessity to be competition caller? No, but you would be a fool to say that it can't help you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a matter of anything. Like, you want to be the best at your craft, you know, and like competition shooting. Yeah. You don't need to be a competition shooter to kill a deer, but it certainly helps to be able to, hit that X every time. Gives you that much more confidence.
It's just like taking it to the next level. It's like, so you probably are already a good turkey hunter. And it's like, okay, well, I've killed my fair share of turkey. What can I do to take this to the next level?
Right.
And then you try to master your calling just to master the craft.
And the way I look at it too, you look at we'll use Pennsylvania season because that's where we're at. PA season comes in. I think it's easier to kill a turkey, week one. You got a lot of 2-year-olds out there, but where the having good calling or real calling comes into play as that season winds down. You get into week 3, week 4.
They've heard all the
they've
calls in the
heard
book.
it, and
I don't know what you have against 2-year-olds. All right, those are the ones we want.
No, nothing. I absolutely nothing against 2-year-olds.
Got a trophy hunter over here.
They're fun.
We like those 2-year-olds.
But just I speak out of my situation. This year in particular, I wasn't able to hunt very much at all weeks 1 and 2 with my work schedule the way it was. So my go time was week 3 and 4, and it just gets tougher. These turkeys have heard it all. They've been bumped, they've been pushed, they've been shot at, you name it. And I think that I do think that turkeys hear some calling that are probably thinking, I don't know about that. So
that's probably Mike again. Going the other way.
So yeah, I mean it's definitely it has to be helpful.
Yeah. Well, something too, when you're out there with your buddies and everybody's putting their calls in, you don't want to be that guy that everybody laughs at as soon as you put that call in,
No doubt.
But yeah, so something we talked about a little bit earlier, again, this is kind of geared towards getting ready for your competition season and stuff like that. Recently, the NWTF made the decision to get rid of the scenarios.
Yeah.
And I'm curious on your thoughts on it. I have my thoughts and opinions on it, but I'm just curious as a caller, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Can you explain that? I'm new to the calling thing, so I'm kind of...
The way the competitions used to be run, they would ask, hey, they'll say caller number 3, let's hear your fly down cackle. And he'll get up there and he'll do a few series of his fly down cackle. And then, then caller number 3, let's hear your assembly yelp. And they go through one call at a time while the judges score them. So over the past few years, I don't know, maybe what year? 2018, 17, maybe 4 or 5 years. They've gone to scenarios. So they'll say, there's a fall flock of birds on a Pennsylvania ridge. There's young gobblers and a handful of hens, and they fly down. They start feeding. So what happens is the caller has to mimic that scenario So whenever they do that, for me as a person in the audience, and again, like, while I was working, I would listen to these scenarios. It's 3 hours worth of calling of these, the top 13 callers that made the final cut. And I would just listen to these over and over and over. I mean, I gave the NWTF probably half of their YouTube views on those videos because of how many times I've listened to them.
Yeah.
But as an audience member, it's very engaging. Where the old style, which is what they're going back to this year again, it's just not as exciting as an audience member.
Yeah.
And as a caller, I'm just curious on Jed to hear his opinion on what he has to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, when I first learned of it, I learned on Facebook, and no ill will towards the NWTF. My initial reaction was a reply back that just said that's unfortunate, because I think, personally, I think it's a step backward. I do agree, and I think a lot of people kind of like the fact that you can. You have a little bit of as a caller, you have some leeway as to which way you want to take this scenario. You can make it, there's so many different ways that you can do it, and you want to do something that catches the judge's ear. So yeah, I was bummed about it, but it was a voted thing, and it's out of my hands. So the way I look at it is I'll go there and call any way they tell me to. I'd be lying if I from the time last year's contest was done, I knew what I needed to do to make myself better. So as soon as it was over, I was working on it.
Do you think this is it's going to make it easier for callers to prepare, or do you think that
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it can, callers still have to work on everything, their sounds, their cadences, things like that, but it makes it easier if you don't have to think about putting together 3 minutes worth of a scenario. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot. Like it may not seem like a lot as a audience member, but as a caller, you're up there and you're trying to think, okay, hey, I got to make sure that I cover the cluck and purr, whatever the calls that are asked for in that. So not having that now takes that out of it. Practice regimens don't have to be as crazy, but I don't want it that way. I'd rather have it to where I gotta come up with something that might have my brand on it. One thing that a few people made point of comment wise, whether it was to me personally or on social media, was I added some gobbling in there. The scenario had the requested calls, but you could add a few calls that maybe weren't on that, but paint the picture. So I felt that I was on track of having something pretty good for this upcoming year, to then just find out that that we're not having scenarios. It was definitely a letdown. But like I said, I'll call there however they tell me. I'm going to be there. Lord willing, I'll be there for the foreseeable future, and compete in any way necessary.
Do you think that I was saying there, could it be that the competition level was so high that that was their way of maybe separating, the guy that can just come in and do a Yelp?
Yeah, and that's what I've heard a lot is a lot of people saying, hey, all these guys are good.
Yeah.
Like all these guys. So the scenario kind of set it apart. Like it took it to another level. Like, okay, how good can these guys put together a realistic scenario? How broad is their turkey vocabulary? And I'll be honest with you. I honestly think that from what I've seen and heard, I wouldn't be surprised that maybe they'll go back next year. You know, they're going to see that this year maybe they don't have as many views on the live feed. Maybe, you know, negative backlash. Like, oh, I liked it the way it used to be. So, you know, we'll see what happens. You know, they're still going to pick who they feel is the best caller.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is it might get rid of the guys. There's some guys that everybody has their strong points. You know what I mean? And by doing the scenarios, I noticed that some of the guys would just really focus on their strong points a lot. And, you know, they might be the best at it in the game, and people will love it.
Okay.
But then maybe a guy has a weaker yelp compared to his cluck and purrs or.
Okay. So the scenario thing has already been.
Yeah, this has been going on for like 5 years of scenarios. So, but what I'm saying with this though is, you know, you can kind of hide your weaker calls throughout the scenarios where maybe this won't. Again, I don't think it's going to be as exciting for the viewers and the people in attendance, but maybe it does level the playing field to where, you know, it gives you the best all around caller.
Yeah. And I even thought, okay, I don't really know the purpose of why. I could see if there was time constraints or issues with keeping it, you know, but they had it, I thought they had it pretty well set where it's like, okay, 13 callers, X amount of time per, and then a little, you know, in between the MC talking and the judges talking, like they had it down. So I don't really know the reasoning why this change was made because as far as I knew, it was positive on every front, from the callers, the judges, but you know maybe I was missing something there. I don't know.
How do they go about picking the judges?
Typically, they've been doing a very good job of getting guys that first and foremost know turkey vocabulary, know turkey sounds, but also getting people that are known, you know, getting some of your turkey hunting, turkey calling celebrities. You know,
been in the industry a long time.
Yeah, you know, guys that have just been around the block and know, and also guys that have respect, you know, that are respected. So yeah, I mean, as a caller, it's always been great, you know. As a kid, I'd see, you know, Preston Pittman on TV or, you know, any of the guys that they have on that panel is guys that at one point in your life instilled that's somebody that you look up to. And to go up there and try to, you know, catch their ear, it's, you know, it's very cool to have that. And they continue to put, you know, very good guys up there. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I think it's about time to wrap this thing up here. Jed was the first guy that took a chance on us at Cluck. He was the first guy that joined the Cluck team, and we definitely want to thank you for that, coming aboard with us and taking a chance on us. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. We wouldn't want anybody else on the team. So
I appreciate that. I'm
absolutely
happy to be here. You guys have been great from day one and continue to be. And I'm looking forward to what we can achieve in the future.
Absolutely. So we will definitely be rooting for you come February. I'm sure you guys can follow along. It's really going to be the turkey action and the content's going to be heating up here over the next couple months. So you'll be able to follow along. You'll be able to follow along with Jed's journey, and we have a couple other guys, you know, that are on the team who are also great turkey callers, and we're just really, really looking forward to this year and what 2024 turkey season's going to bring. So, but I appreciate everybody following along. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're on Go Wild. Anything else, Brian?
YouTube.
Oh yeah, YouTube. You can find us on there. We have a lot of our calling tutorials on there, and a lot of sound files from calls that we offered in 2023. We don't have any of the 2024 calls up yet, but there's a few new ones that'll be coming to the lineup this year that I think everybody's gonna love, and we're really excited about. So we have a discount code for you. Use the code POD10 POD10. That'll save you 10%.
All caps.
Yep, all caps on any order if you're following along and listening to the podcast. And we appreciate everybody. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to be who we are. And we want to thank Mike with Creekside Wildlife. He's here with us today too. He helps us put on the podcast. So we appreciate you, Mike, as well.
Not a problem.
And all right, thanks everybody.
Yep, thank you. See you next time.
Take care.
That's it for another episode of the Clucking Around podcast. We thank everybody for listening. Be sure to check us out on all social medias at Cluck Custom Calls and our website, cluckcustomcalls.com.